Welcome back, StoryDads fans, and today we will be discussing Inside Out. I'm Eric, licensed marriage and family therapist, film nerd, and that's why this movie fits so well for us. I've been excited to discuss this one for a long time. We get into stages of development, we get into grief, we get into depression, and just how this movie doesn't just tell those concepts, but shows you and articulates how those concepts work. You'll come away from this one really understanding, even on a deeper level, how this plays out as you're having to watch these movies with your kids for the third, fourth, and fifth time. So join us. Welcome back, StoryDads fans. We are on to our second episode of the year. What are we doing today, Micah?
Well, we're continuing our Pixar streak today. We are doing the psychologist's favorite.
We all are therapy nerds. Everyone in therapy grad school loves Inside Out. I remember this movie came out and I was licensed at that point, but working in private practice. I was like, this is the greatest. I didn't have kids yet. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever for kids. And because it's like they just nailed everything out of all the psychology textbooks and illustrated it and created it in the Pixar full of heart way that you can just access and understand all these things. And it really does do a good job of explaining a lot of, psychological concepts in a lot of fun ways. But where were you at when this movie came out?
It was 2015, was just recently second married and no kids yet.
Yeah.
2015 is before I feel like we still had a world that was fairly normal and people that talked to each other, and we all had kind of like we had a lot more in common. I think we still have a lot more in common than we think we do. Absolutely. But we were more, everyone kind of agreed that we all had a lot in common and behaved that way. And so 2015, it was a different time. I think, I remember seeing this one, and there's very few movies that I've seen in my life where like I walk out of the theater and I'm just like, I'm floored in a way where I go, how did you land that? Like, how'd you stick that landing? Like, how did you, and I remember oddly another one was, I think it was Spider-Man 2 by Sam Raimi. I think I remember walking out of that one and going like, how did you do that? And also, oddly, another Spider-Man movie, the first Into the Spider-Verse cartoon, I remember walking out.
You were telling me that one just blew out the doors off of anything we knew about animation after that. Like, it was, all right, we're in a whole new landscape.
Well, it definitely redefined stylistically. And technically in some ways, which, as we're talking about Pixar, they were the first ones really to blow the lid off technically what could be done with 3D. And then most recently, Sony has reset the bar stylistically with what can be done. And, and of course, there's a lot of technology that goes into making that style possible. Yeah. So it's a really cool marriage of the science and the art. And then, and speaking of which, with this, so the marriage of the science and the art is you have a lot of the science of psychology in this, but also in as many ways as there's these like guilty pleasures for the psychology, there's these guilty pleasures for the art as well, particularly like that sequence when they go through the imagination island and they go into abstraction and And again, when they go to the dream studio, there's all these sort of like, there's some inside jokes about film production in there too,
which is a perfect place to do that in like a dream sequence, right? As we're putting on a production, that thing, like it was really creative, really like beautifully done movie. We were kind of debating when we were going through like what movies are we going to go through and talk about, because anyone who's listened to this podcast, we break down themes and symbolism and all the stuff that's around this, and this one is it's so on the nose in its themes and symbolism, because that is kind of the whole movie, that we're like, what is there to really kind of get into? But I think there is some pretty cool stuff, and some things will illuminate for people that maybe they didn't know before. But yeah, I mean, how are you approaching this conversation we're going to get into around like a movie like this? Because it's different.
I was trying to think about what this movie does particularly well. The easy answer is it does everything particularly well. Like it, one of the hallmarks that sets apart a professional artist from an amateur artist is consistency. It's not like you're not as good as your greatest work. You're only as good as your worst work. And so a professional artist does not necessarily do great work all the time. They just do bad work extremely infrequently.
Okay.
And so this movie raises their level to where like they do everything very, very well. There's nothing in this movie that's done like gray, like everything. They hit all of their fundamentals of storytelling with excellence. And
it'd be because it's such a narrow margin. If you're gonna tell a story about emotions, and the emotions are characters themselves, and it's abstract, it's a very different type of movie. But like Christopher Nolan's Inception, right? That movie is so complicated with the dream sequences and dream within a dream within a dream, and how the physics of all of it work. But they by the time you come to the end and all the complications are happening, like you're right there tracking as an audience, that you only get there if like you've nailed every single domino along the way to like help the audience understand what's happening. And with a abstract movie like Inside Out for children, there's a very narrow margin for error there.
Yeah, and what they did is almost the opposite of a Nolan movie, because Nolan tends to stack plot. This movie has like no the plot is so simple. It's the same as like The Empire Strikes Back. Like 3 things happen in that whole movie.
Right.
And all of the interest comes from how difficult it is to do those things, the obstacles that occur and the way the characters interact with those obstacles. And so this movie perfectly does that. There's really only one thing happening in the whole movie. And I was going through my notes and compared it to Gladiator in a similar way. Like only 2 things happen in Gladiator. Right. Only 2 things happen in this movie, but it's how.
So like what are those 2 things for our audience?
Okay. So your movie plot, first of all, Riley is not the main character, right? So Joy is the main character, and it's a ensemble cast, but really, Joy is the main character. Riley is the stakes character.
She's the stakes character.
And so the plot is, the first half of the movie is we need to navigate a physical environment, that we navigate a physical landscape to restore the status quo so we can get back to normal.
Right.
Halfway through the movie, we realize the audience figures it out a little bit before Joy does, but halfway before the movie, we realize, oh no, it's not about navigating a physical landscape to get to status quo. It's about navigating this abstract emotional landscape for Joy, not for Riley, but for Joy, in order to become something more.
Right.
And in Gladiator, for example, it was like, I'm out for personal revenge to restore personal justice. And then he gets to the middle of the ring, and it happens in the center of the movie, where the movie kind of flips over and becomes a different movie, where he goes, oh no, it's not about restoring personal justice. I'm actually going to restore like cosmic justice by like, saving Rome. Right. And then like Mad Max Fury Road, it's like we're gonna go out, and then we're gonna realize, oh no, we should go back. We should go back and fix it all. And so the thing that this movie does, and it has to do because it is such an abstract movie, is it has to make everything incredibly concrete. And so that's another thing that you'll see this frequently with like theater productions, where someone does, absurdist theater. Yeah. And so then they do it very absurdly. Because they go, well, it's absurdist theater. And so like there's a play, it's called Black Rider, and Tom Waits did the music. I love Tom Waits. He's like maybe my favorite musician, but it's like unbearable. You cannot watch Black Rider. It's unbearable to watch because it's completely absurd and they perform it absurdly. And so the correct way to do absurd theater is incredibly concretely. And then the absurd shines, right? It's like if you were a chef and you've got your 5 flavor profiles and you just maxed out, you went to 11 on all 5 flavor profiles. It's going to be disgusting. Like, so it's the same principle at work. And so this movie, because the whole thing is this like internal, like it happens over the course of like a day, right? Like it's like one day in San Francisco. Which, I also would run away, but not in 2015. It was a little bit nicer then.
Hey, come visit the Bay Area. We'll show you a good time in parts of the city. The part Riley moved to, I don't know. That's a little different, but
yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But so for this like odyssey that they go on, that's feelings. It has to be like super concretely manifested. All your metaphors have to become like all your subtext becomes super text.
Yeah. I think of just the technical aspects of this movie, right? Because they have to create this whole world within the mind of there's a maze she's got to navigate, and that's long-term memory, and then there's this abstract thing, and imagination land, and train, all these kind of like clever ideas, but you have to make it into this whole cohesive world building thing they have to do. They have to create character designs, which makes sense for all of these. They have to do sound design. The sound design, if you don't know anything about sound design, this is a really interesting one to listen to, and just notice all the sound effects and all the clever little sounds and stuff that like have to get created, because when it's so abstract like this, you have nothing to go off of. If I'm making sound effects for like footsteps, everyone knows that sound, right? Like those are obvious kind of 101 stuff. But for like a core memory that's coming out of a part of the mind that is shining in some way, how do you just create this ethereal thing? Like they have to think of all of these concepts, and there's so many cool things that technically they have to do. And what's cool is when all those come together, it just, you don't even notice that stuff. You just feel the emotion of the story to create emotions that are characters that are also, so Joy isn't the main character. She feels a lot of sadness, a lot of grief, a lot of that. How do you create a character called Joy, which depicts this emotion that also experiences sadness? It's a tough needle to thread, man, but they do it so well.
Yeah. And so I'm curious about, Joy's journey parallels, or I should say Riley's journey parallels Joy's journey, because Joy has to go through these experiences first, and then Riley sort of follows. So as you've watched, as the plot plays out, the plots are parallel in terms of hitting the,
Riley's going
chapter marks. But so I'm curious about on the psychological side, I was looking at as it starts, and like you said, the world building, like part of what they're building is not only necessarily the world of the movie, which they, the beautiful thing about world building and movie when it's done well, the filmmakers are dictating to you the rules and nature of reality. And usually most of the movies you watch, filmmakers are doing a very passive job at that. And they're just they're setting the movie for most intents and purposes in the world you live in every day. In my favorite movies, they're sort of shifting that frame a little, and I love like magical realism. Like
the rules in this world of the movie are decidedly different than the world you know and live in every day. So how do we explain that, and how do we orient you to the world you're going to be living in for the next 2 hours in this movie?
So they do that in this movie as filmmakers, the way any other magical realist filmmaker is going to do, but then they also do it in terms of like framing the psychology. And so one of the things I was curious about is this movie takes a very like constructionist view, where it seems to me that it's nurture over nature in this movie, which makes sense in terms of a movie plot, because you want your characters to influence what happens. But there's like,
that's interesting.
Riley seems to be just a product of her memories and like her experiences.
I see. Yeah. Her personality is dictated by these experiences she's had. She had this hockey moment when she was a kid, and now she has Hockey Island as part of her personality, and that's part of it, right? Yeah.
So it's like all the things that happen to you make these little beads, and then these little beads dictate your persona. Full stop. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that which I think is true. I mean, so, okay, what we know about like the majority of human behavior is it's about 60-40. 60% is nature, your genetics account for a lot of that. And that includes behavior, that includes temperament, that includes a proclivity towards being agreeable, being extroverted, being intellectually minded, being artistically minded. 60% of that is pretty well encoded. And if you take someone who is like very much an extrovert and put them in any introvert situations, they're not going to come out of it as an introvert. They're going to adapt. They're going to adjust. Like there's another 40% that will influence, and they will like develop around that. So I don't have a problem with the idea that, hey, you had this magical moment playing hockey, or this connection with your family. Hey, it kind of sparks this more competitive side that maybe was already there. And I think like it explains that like 40% nurture part. But certainly, it'd be interesting for them to show like, hey, trying to push someone in a box that just like they're not wired towards. It's like if someone is I'm trying to think of a good example here. Intellectually introverted, they like to sit at home with their books. You could give them all the training in the world and tell them they're the best. Like they're not going to be a great public speaker. They're not wired for that. Right. They would probably hate that.
Even if they do get amazing at it, it's going to exhaust them in a way that it won't exhaust someone with a different like
exactly.
But it's worth saying like 40% that's nurture is a lot.
Sure. Yeah. There is a lot you can do with that. I think of, I was at a football game with a buddy, and there was some people in the box with us, and the guy was telling us how his kids played football at Duke University. And he was talking to the coaches, and he said all the parents at the beginning of the year, when they're talking to the coaches, would ask him like, hey, what do we need to do to get our kids to the NFL? Like, what extra advantages can we get? And the coaches like just looked around and was like, hey, look left and right at the parents. Who's the biggest, meanest ones? Who's the most athletic ones? That's the guy whose kids are probably going to the NFL. Like there's stuff you can do around the margins, but like if you're talking like the elite of the elite levels of something like athletics, man, if your genetics are just the price of entry, right? And you can be Rudy all day long and be inspirational, like, and those are great stories. Rudy ain't playing in the NFL. Right?
Rudy ain't going pro. That was the end of that story.
Which amazing story, but like the reason why he's inspirational is because of the heart, is because of the grit, the determination, all that stuff, right? So anyway, both of those are there. I got a bit of forgiveness of it because it makes sense to me why, if you're telling a story about development, I mean, I would argue there is a lot of kind of the innate natural development too. I mean, essentially it's a story of her starting to enter puberty. And new emotions coming on board, and this idea that as you enter adolescence and you're trying on new identities and you're reinventing yourself, part of your personalities fall away and then part of them come back. Like that is the natural way that those things develop, and certain memories will influence that. But I think there's a lot of like, it does a good job of depicting how a lot of things that you experienced early on that were such a core part of who you were and your identity, like those can fall away very quickly. And frankly need to as you mature.
And to push back a little bit, the thing that they do that maybe, like, I understand from a storytelling perspective, you would never want to, there would be no interest in telling a story where everything is inevitable and predestined. Like that's not a compelling story. And it's more of a fable than a story. So you need characters to have agency and make choices. And so I understand why you would frame it on like a, let's say like an 80-20 constructionist kind of standpoint. Right. But I think what they do is each character, when we get little glimpses into the other characters, each character kind of has like a dominant persona. So like mom's is dominant, sad, dad's is dominant, mad. Angry. The cat is dominant, like absent. Riley's dominant, joy. And so it doesn't go in and act like every human begins as this joyful angelic thing, because I think I just simply don't believe that on a philosophical level, but that's Riley's. And so we're not worried about everybody. We're just worried about Riley.
But I think you could take that as like her temperament is the big 5 personality traits. She's high in agreeableness, which is joy, which is extroversion, which is you get along with other people. You take in the moment around you. That is an innate personality temperament that someone who, say, in the world of Inside Out, has joy as their dominant, like, whereas someone who's got anger running the board, they are going to be high or low in agreeableness, high disagreeable. Like they're going to want to push back. So there's a representation there. I think makes sense with what the reality of
and the way they have them like drive is so great. You know, it's and I know people are like, oh, fear drives that person. Yeah, like fear's at the wheel.
Yeah. Or, one part that's cool is when Joy's gone. When her and Sadness are gone, which is cool because like they're having to learn how to integrate, which is the whole grief story that she's playing out. The other three emotions, it's the scene when Riley's around the dinner table and she's telling them around school, and they're all trying to imitate Joy, but they can't do it. So like disgust tries to imitate Joy, like, hey, how was school? Oh, fine. But it's like you can't help but like that piece comes out, right? Which is also like when Riley goes into that place when she can't access joy. She can't access sadness. That's a really good depiction of what depression looks like. Because depression isn't like just I feel sad, I'm crying all the time. It's a shutdown of emotions, which is what happens when you're going through a major adjustment in life. She just moved. She's grieving the loss of her old home, her old friends. She can't access these feelings, which she needs to have the emotional catharsis, which she eventually gets at the end of the movie. And so it's all just like these instincts, disgust, fear, anger. That's the only thing she's got, which is a really cool kind of intuitive way to depict that fits into the story so well. Again, just another way like the creators of the story fit all the pieces in, so it makes great psychological sense while also telling a cohesive story.
Yeah, it's really remarkable how well they personified it on every level. The character design, the casting, like Amy Poehler.
The casting's great. Amy Poehler's Joy's great. Mindy Kaling is Disgust is great. Bill Hader, Fear. Who's the guy who does Anger? He's perfect in there. Forget the guy's name.
The whole cast just absolutely, and the little peek into how the sausage is made when you're in the abstraction and you see them break down the characters and and it's just fantastic. And then so I'm just looking through my notes here. So they, one of the things that occurs to me about this movie is that it is in a way Fantastic Voyage from 1966. Oh, that's interesting. Is they are like a spaceship inside a person going to fix the thing that's broken in a weird way. And that's a great movie from, that's dealing with, an immunity versus emotion. But so it kind of felt like that to me a little bit. I'm very curious if there's any inspiration there from that, or if it's just a coincidence because there's only so many stories.
How many movies do you have that are like, let's go inside the person and fix something that's wrong, right? Where we're telling an inner space, another one like a internal, like what's going on. I can think of, a handful. Hey, a quick break from our discussion on Inside Out to remind you all to like, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend, and let us know what other movies you want us to discuss. If this one sparks anything or brings up any other ideas for movies we haven't discussed, please let us know. And back to the show.
Well, and this one is one of those where it's like it has to be animated because the level of abstraction necessary, like there is not going to be
it would be action. A catastrophe live action.
It would be awful, right? And so Fantastic Voyage was the best you could do because they're navigating a physical space. And so but to be navigating, something as abstract as emotions, they did such an amazing job. Again, just physicalizing every metaphor. So the movie, again, Joy is the main character. The inciting incident is when Sadness touches a thing and it almost changes, right? And so that's the inciting incident for Joy. The inciting incident for Riley is, moving, and it sort of happens before the movie even starts.
But those things are playing out right at the same time. So like as she's moving, she's trying to be happy girl the whole time, and Sadness is going out and starting to touch this because internally, Riley, I take that as Riley starting to recognize like, oh, I am losing my friends and I am losing all this. And she's trying to hold that back.
Like the process of the move might be exciting, but it's like Sadness is starting to touch at your world. And so, so the nature of an inciting is, and I can't remember if we've talked about this on the podcast or not, but the formula, the textbook way to do your inciting incident is that whatever it is in your story, it is an event that you get a glimpse of the conflict that the movie cannot end without that conflict's resolution.
Okay.
So like in Jaws, the inciting incident is the detective finding the body on the beach and that accordion shot where the ocean meets him, right? And so in that moment, oh, it's him or the shark. And like that right there, and you might not know it concretely, but that event right there tells you, and the way
that's
been
it's communicated to you.
And so when you have a globe and it's like, is it going to be yellow or blue? We're not ending the movie till we find out. Like that's really all the whole movie is about, which is fantastic. And again, it's so simple. It's one thing happening. It's not 10 million things. It's not two ferries with a bunch of criminals on one and a bunch of innocent people on another one. And like, that's a whole movie, Mr. Nolan. That's a whole film. That's speed 3 right there. Like, it's not just a 15-minute pinch in your movie. It's too much. It's brilliant. No shade at, Act 2B of Dark Knight. Like that's brilliant, but that's a whole movie, dude.
Right.
And so, this inciting incident is like yellow or blue. Who wins?
Yep.
And of course the answer is you only win by losing, right?
Well, it's as part of her maturing and her entering adolescence and dealing with complexity around emotions, not just like I feel sad or feel happy. Her learning she can hold both of these at the same time. She can experience both of these at the same time. Those who saw our Coco episode, we had Brett Bowles on. He does explanations of all the music and arrangement and orchestration of this. He's got a really cool clip on the music of this when Riley starts recognizing she can hold both emotions and how they go back and forth between a major chord, which is like happiness, and minor chord, which is sadness. And at the end, the main theme of this is built around a major 7 chord, which a major 7 chord holds in it both major and minor chord in it together. And so the music's also telling that story too. We'll link that clip. It's great.
Yeah, again, these filmmakers, they missed nothing. And so what it reminds me of is like you'll watch a news story, right? And it'll be some event, and every event is like 10 million things happening at once, depending on your level of analysis, right? Like it doesn't matter how, like a kid's like a minor league football game, is 10 million things happening, and it just depends on your level of analysis. But then the interviewer will step up and be like, so is this a good outcome or a bad outcome?
Right.
And it's like, come on, it's the same. Is it a yellow memory or a blue memory? And it's like, well, the answer is yes. It's yes, all of them, and it depends. And so the main character Joy hits rock bottom, and I'm looking at the time, so I'm gonna race to the crisis, right? We already talked about the midpoint. The midpoint is when sadness consoles Bing Bong. And I love using these names like with sincerity, right? So Bing Bong is in his moment of personal crisis, and sadness, relates to him. And mourns with him. We get to see grief,
which is when you first get the first glimpse of what sadness is for. Because at the beginning, Joy in the exposition does like fear, he keeps her safe. Anger, he makes her assertive. Joy, I keep her happy, right? Sadness, well, we don't really know what she's for, right?
All sadness does is ruin Joy's control complex, right? And so Bing Bong is like, mated to Joy in this naivety and this sort of idiocy of pure childhood bliss at all costs. And they're like teammates. And then with sadness comes along and like steps in and gives Bing Bong what he really needs, which is this closure of grief. And sadness gets the first glimpse of like,
and if you really want to go dark, like Bing Bong does it because it's the whole story is a grief story for Riley. And Bing Bong, if you want to look at him, is his own stakes character. Like he's coming to terms with he's at the end of his life.
And so that's where I'm going with this, right? Is they are united in this naivety of childhood. In this idiotic bliss that's totally nonsensical. And it's supposed to be at one point, right? And so then when the characters they hit rock bottom, both metaphorically and physically, she is literally on the rocks at the bottom of creation. She's in Hades. and this personification of childhood.
Yeah.
The personification of childhood and her conception of what makes a healthy person, both at the same time, have to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
So childhood dies.
Yeah.
So that Joy and then downstream Riley can be resurrected as a more mature adult, which is the process in all of us. We're constantly killing our old self,
and it's totally necessary. You know, when my family moved to the San Francisco Bay Area and my oldest son was 4 at the time, it was the first time I'd ever seen him like go through just like, he was mad for about a month. He missed his friends, he missed his preschool, and he liked cool new parts of his house and his room we're setting up, but like he was upset. He went through his first grief moment there at 4. And it was like, I remember my wife was having the just the empathetic maternal instincts of like, I feel bad for him, I want to rescue him, should we not have moved, was this a bad idea? And I remember, like, and it was hard seeing him like that, but I also held the idea of like, do you want him to go through his whole life never having gone through an adjustment like that, never having gone through that moment where like his world around him kind of crumbles, like inside Riley's mind, where all the personalities start falling apart and who she knew who was like, that was maybe the first time in his life he went through that, and he will go through that many times over the course of his life, and that is good, that is important, that is necessary. It's painful in that moment. It's our job as parents, I think what Riley's parents as good parents learn to do is just kind of hold space for that and not just try to pretend like things are fine, which is, that's, if they have an arc, it's kind of that.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me of the scripture that says that you rejoice with those that are rejoicing and you mourn with those that are mourning.
Yeah.
And that is like, that's just the thing that you do in order to allow closure. And, you know, what we see at the control board is, you know, Joy refuses to acknowledge the crisis.
Yeah.
And so Riley's refusing to, you know, she's downstream of these events. Yeah. And what happens with this unresolved crisis that's left like unmanaged and without the catharsis is the control board ossifies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And which is what will happen to someone's maturity level.
Yeah.
Which you see, I think, and this is me with my like layman psychology, is like as people develop through their various like stages of maturity, if there's something that goes unresolved due to a crisis or something that's not nurtured or something that's not developed or you know, an emotional skill or quality, that person's maturity will kind of, emotional maturity can stop there.
Yeah, well, and you like when something solidifies, it's called like an addiction or like a bad habit or a core belief. I am just this way. You like your psychology will learn to adjust around it, and that piece just stays ossified and solid there, right? Yeah. So like I am just not someone who deals with conflict, right? Well, you could be, you like, but people have this belief that kind of cements itself in, and then they spend their whole lives just working around how they manage conflict, and that, you know, that can lead to adaptability and coping mechanisms, but it also leads to a lot of problems because sometimes you just need to be able to manage that.
Right. So like we could imagine Riley with the plan that gets put in there, like that light bulb, I'm going to run away. Yeah. And then the board ossifies around it. Yeah. That could, you know, flash forward 30 years. Yeah. She's in her third marriage. You know, it's like, I run away. When things get hard, I run away. I never should have done this in the first place. The way out is escape instead of endurance. Yeah. Right. And so that belief would just freeze her board at that level of maturity. I mean, the level, the depth of the symbolism that they created.
Well, so what happens is the only way that idea can get unlodged there, once that idea, that belief takes root, sadness is the only thing that can get that out. She's the one who's got to do that because she's got like, in order to dislodge that idea, you have to embrace the grief and the pain and the loss. Like you have to go into that. But if you run from that, which is what Joy has her doing the whole time, that thing just stays stuck in there. And like you said, that lasts for decades. She's running away from every relationship and every painful thing, and all for fear of like letting what Joy's done the whole movie, like letting sadness. I don't want to let that wave of sadness come. Also, the longer that goes on, the bigger that wave of sadness is going to happen. And I see people where it's like, man, you got years and decades of skeletons in the closet and secrets and running away from this stuff. Like, it gets harder and harder to unpack that. And there's circumstances where you see people and they're later in their life, it's like, man, can they even unpack that? Can they even go and open that up again? Has it gotten too far away from that? It's so like that. Is one of the most powerful symbols in the movie of like that idea, that light, that light bulb that locks in. And like when an idea comes in, again, light bulb idea, like that is the proper symbol for that. When an idea grabs root and takes hold, whether that's a negative belief about yourself or an ideology or whatever that is, like it just takes over and you lose all ability to manage that. If you're not, I think one of the big strengths of like the Stoic philosophers is they did such a good job of like externalize, like your ideas, your thoughts are not you. Like you can externalize that, you can play with all those things. But if you can't differentiate from that and those things lock in, all the damage we just unpacked is there.
Yeah. And ultimately it's being unwilling to feel bad and but what if I feel bad? And it's like, well, that's a feeling. And like, you're gonna have to do it. And whatever conflict you ignore now only grows until eventually you do have to contend with that conflict.
And pain and suffering is part of life. That's why what I appreciate about this at the time is like that grief is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's actually really important.
Yeah, it turns out sadness is kind of the hero in this.
Absolutely. And because all the empathy, all the healing, all the connection comes out of that. And I think that we got a lot of messages now that just say like, do continue to run from the pain, from the sadness. If you encounter some information that makes you question what you knew about the world or about yourself or about your own conceptualization of life, and it conflicts with that and it brings up all that dissonance, like we explain it away, we run from that, we avoid that stuff.
Just don't do it. Just lock it away and banish it and just clutch harder to these core memories. And then you maintain this eternal childhood. And then, the unexamined life is a life not worth living.
Yeah. I mean, reality is undefeated. It always catches up to you. Yep. And it's you see, it's why when you see someone that is in this true stage of arrested development and they're not left home, can't hold down a job, it's like, it's heartbreaking because it's like, there is so much more potential that's there, but they've gotten to that place because they're unwilling to let go, to face the pain of what Riley goes through in this, of the loss of her past, of I want to still do the same things I did as a kid and have the same friends, but life moves on and you can't stay in that spot.
Yeah. And so
is there a villain comeuppance in this one?
And so, that's where I was going to go. Villain comeuppance here is that Joy is the villain.
Joy. Yeah.
And her comeuppance happens down in that pit, which is, I mean, it's not her comeuppance necessarily. It's her her crisis and her climax. She's down. She hits rock bottom. She's addicted to being happy. She hits rock bottom. She confronts her addiction. Her conviction that you must be happy and childlike all the time. Yeah. She becomes acquainted with sorrow.
She has to let go of the imaginary childhood friend who served his purpose and is no longer needed.
And so, which is, again, the external manifestation of her realizing her entire ethos, that life is about being happy, has to die. And it does. Physically dies with Bing Bong. She comes out. She goes on to murder a million imaginary boyfriends. And goes to, she has to rescue sadness. So her comeuppance is letting sadness drive, I think.
It's a death of ego. It's a death of self.
Yeah.
She has to let go of, I don't have to be the one in charge. I don't have all the tools and skills to be able to drive this thing like someone else. I need sadness the same way. I need sadness. Sadness is more equipped to handle these problems than me. If Riley needs to be a whole person, like I need to get out of the way.
Right. Yeah, I need to relinquish the childhood. So in a way, you know, since our abstraction becomes concrete, and then our concrete is now going to become abstract again, like on her comeuppance is death. Like the old joy dies and gives way for a new joy, which turns out to be fuller, integrated, more capable. They get the new board, right? And so I think that's the villain comeuppance. And honestly, it couldn't be any other way. Like this movie having an external villain that was like a, you know, some kind of devious character or something. I mean, unless you're going to go into the world of like she gets a head injury and, you know, or like suddenly develops like a
there's a horrific persona. Trauma or something that happens, right. And like some dark black emotion comes out and is trying to whatever, I don't know,
she gets MK Ultra or something. What I do love is that at the point where Joy has hit rock bottom and she's in her personal Hades and is coming out, the parallel is that Riley she's dressed like the meme of Kermit the Frog when he's like the evil Kermit. It's like right. So she is wearing all black, which also is like mourning. She's like dressed in a funereal fashion.
Sure.
But her personal hell, her personal low point happens on a public bus, which is appropriate because if you're on a Greyhound in the Bay Area, then probably you're also in your own personal hell. And I don't wish that on anyone.
Something's gone wrong, right?
So, something's gone.
Although in this one, she's got to go back home. She's got to go back home to her mom and dad and stay.
That's right. She emerges from the personal hell and she gets back to her mom and dad. So yeah, man, that's Inside Out. And
I mean, it's you know, of course, there's all sorts of abstractions. Well, one of the things I think was fun about this is it even for people who aren't like psychologically minded, the movie itself you don't need us to explain it. It just illuminates all these concepts and you start seeing all these things. And
that's why it's called Inside Out, is they tell you right up front, like, hey, we're going to take all the subtext and make it super text.
Totally. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's, I mean, it does it really well, but our hope in this conversation is that the storytelling of all of it, and even just some like the deeper psychological concepts, like how they depict depression, how they depict grief, maturity, letting go of childhood, like all these themes are there and you kind of see them. I think it makes it a little bit, hopefully we can make it a little bit more explicit and interesting for you as you have to watch it for the third, fourth, and fifth time with your kids.
Yeah. And one last note on our way out is, again, from a storytelling perspective, what they did, again, because they did everything.
Yeah.
Like they ticked every box. One of the things they did is they got really, really specific. Instead of trying to make a movie that's about everybody's feelings, they made a story about Riley's feelings.
Yeah.
And what happens is I have never been a 12-year-old girl that moved to San Francisco. I've never played hockey. But I identify with that whole movie.
Yeah.
I did not have an imaginary friend. But when he dies, that my childhood friend dies in this, right? So because they didn't attempt to make everybody's interior story, they made Riley's internal story. And by being specific and trying to tell the truth about a specific story, they made something universal.
Yeah.
And so that's a note for all, hopefully, and probably no professional screenwriters are ever going to watch this or hear about it, but maybe someday someone will aspire to be one. But please, for the love of God, tell a specific story with as much integrity to that character as you can, and then allow it to become universal in its honesty and its sincerity.
Absolutely. Because if you don't, you will be down in the hell of being preachy and just too on the nose with stuff. Like it never goes well when you do that. Trust us.
Yeah. Once you try to be universal, it just becomes vague and general.
Exactly.
And then it smells bad.
Yeah. So that's Inside Out. Thanks for joining us, everyone. What are we doing next week?
Man, I have no clue. We're still in our Pixar streak.
I think we're up to Finding Nemo.
All right, I love that.
You just got back from the Monterey Bay Aquarium, so
that's right.
You're already did your research on this.
I'm ready. I've got fish on the brain, dude.
Yeah. So stay tuned for us with that. We'll wrap out Pixar and plenty more fun stuff coming. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us, everyone. That was Inside Out. We hope you had a great time with us. Another reminder to like, comment, subscribe. Go ahead and binge some past episodes. We're up to episode like 36, 37 now. So lots of fun content there, and go ahead and let us know if there's anything else you want to hear from us. Love to connect with you on that.